Hello, Gautham, and welcome back to Galatta Plus.
Thank you.
So basically, this is to just kind of get into a deep dive about a movie that I liked very, very much. That is Vendhu Thanindhathu Kaadu. And I really want to start by saying one thing. A lot of people are saying that Gautam's moved out of his zone. Gautam moved out of his zone. Yes, geographically, maybe yes, you've moved out of your zone, but aesthetically and I think even philosophically, I think it's still a very Gautam movie. I don't see it as being very different from Vinay Thandi Varvaya, for instance, because in that movie, like Simbu is a passive protagonist. Here also, he's a passive protagonist. In that movie, Simbu is kind of whatever Simbu does. He's not the actor. He's the acted upon. There the person who manipulates his life is Trisha. Here, the thing that manipulates his life is destiny. So there is a lot of, and in both films, the heroine was older. That's a complete coincidence. But what I'm kind of getting at is, I see this film as being very much a part of your continuum and your sensibility. Though I know that it's Jaimohan's story, and you both co-wrote it and all that. What do you have to say that? I mean, why do you think there is such a like a thing that this is completely moving away from that thing has come about, that you completely moved away from the zone?
I think that's how people will perceive it to be, right? That's the general first opinion that will come out, I think. But I felt this when I was talking to Jay Mohan, that this film is driven by destiny. It's like we talked of it as like wood drifting through water.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a mind of his own, is what we generally arrived at. And I felt that this was in comparison to Vinay Thandi Varuvaya, where Simbu is driven by what Jesse might, do with him or not do with him.
Might
and
or might
stuff
not
like
do.
that.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's in me. I mean, if you want to get down to like the basics, then I studied in a college down south. It was as local as possible, as nativity as possible, as rooted as possible is the words that these guys will use, right? So I've been there, I've done that, I know this. Like I know boys, so Muthu has studied BSc in this film.
Yeah.
We mentioned that. So I know boys who studied with me who behaved and had the same body language like Muthu. Now he had a gun, and that took him to Bombay, and then from there on, that gun played a part in his life, like how the gun draws him, and all that. Those boys were not driven by a gun, but they were just driven by destiny to come interact with me at that point. And I know a lot of people who said, speaking to you, we managed to find a few words in English and all that stuff. My interest in Tamil cinema happened only with discussion with these boys. Film appreciation happened in one small place called Kiranur, where we'd hire, VHS tapes to watch films. So as localist as it gets, if that's the word to use.
Yeah.
So I don't believe in the fact that they've said, okay, Gautam's moved out from his comfort zone and he's made something where he's worked really hard to, nothing like that.
Yeah.
We did basic research as to where this house can be, what Radhika will wear. Simbu's clothes were completely worked by Uttara, and you won't notice these clothes because it just blends with, the rest of the film, I'm saying.
Yeah.
And Rajivan came in, and then there was a team that worked, and there was always me telling them, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is where I want to shoot.
Right.
The Teri Kaadu, the thorn bushes, and everything was set up by us. And once you go into the Parota Kada in the film, it was easy only because to shoot grime and to shoot with the parotas and to shoot was, something that we watched and we learned. And then even otherwise, I've been in those places and I've eaten those places. Except upstairs is where the crime happens, right?
Yeah.
That alone we had to like figure out, and so I'm saying there's nothing that I conform to the idea that I've moved out, but that's how people want to look at it. If they want to say I'm a new filmmaker now, I'm really happy because it's a film that's worked, and if this is going to land me a few more films, then I'm really happy about that.
We'll talk about the writing first, and this goes out to Mr. Jaimohan as well. I mean, you guys co-wrote the thing from his story,
Yes.
right? There are different ways of co-writing, right? It's like some people, like let's say I'm co-writing a movie with you, then I write 5 scenes, send it to you, and then you make your corrections, send it back to me. That's one way of doing it. Or you send me something, and then I give you voice notes and say, this is working for me, this is not working for me, this is kind of a thing. How did that co-writing happen?
Again, since we're talking about writing, this happened also with Reshma before,
right,
where Nidane and Ponnusnam was written as a story and a screenplay actually by her. But I got into it, and I tried to own it, and I owned it and made my own screenplay about it. With Queen also, it was written completely as a screenplay itself, but then as a director you have to try and own it. Otherwise you can't. I don't think anybody can just go and say, okay, these are the scenes, let's go
You
and
can't
make
just
it.
get a screenplay and direct a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to own
I'm
it.
not
like you
taking
said.
anything away from the writer. So obviously a zone like this was set up by Jay Monser for me. But even that happened because I went to him and I asked him for something like this.
Right.
So when we were discussing for another film, and I had already set up something with Simbu, which was Nadigalil Neeradam Surya, which was a superstar
Right.
script.
You talked about that. Yeah.
Here, I asked him for a low-lying gangster film.
Yeah.
So he told me that he narrated something to Vasantha Balan, which Vasantha Balan didn't pick. I don't identify with this in Ramari. I think Vasantha Balan said to him. So I said, can I listen to it? So he said, it's based on a... then he said he narrated 15 minutes of a short story called Aindhu Neruppu.
Right.
And he left it open. I asked him what next. He said, I left it to the reader's imagination. But this can go into what you're asking. And he narrated something about Parota Kada and a war between a barber shop and a Parota Kada and two men.
Right.
And then how these boys are all Koli Pade and all
Right,
that
right,
stuff
right,
within
right.
that. I said, I love this. And even in that, one of the few lines that he mentioned at that time was how about the gun and how it picks somebody that it wants, the gun picks somebody. And I love that line.
Yeah.
There were moments like, this ஒரு பெரிய மெஷின்ல ஒரு சின்ன ஸ்க்ரூ அதுதான் நம்ம யார் என்ன செய்றாங்க நமக்கு தெரியாது. So I love those parts. This is all the first discussion I had. I said, give me more. So he wrote about 80 pages of just scenes as dialogues between people, Bombay and the setup and all that. There was no descriptions of places as such and all that. After that, there was nothing that I sent back to him, Baddy, till he saw the film. It was not like a everyday discussion where I will tell him, sir, I've changed this or I've changed that. In passing, he mentioned that his wife said, idhula love story illa. So he said, you please feel free to work on it. Maybe a song can come in and all that is what he said.
Right.
I said, yes, sir, I will work on it. About 4 or 5 times during filming, I called him to ask him a few things like, sir, I don't think there is a moment where he sees blood being washed off. He sees, somebody being beaten up.
Yeah.
Then he sees cops come in. He hides the gun.
Right.
I want something where he's actually drawn out on on a mission or something like that. Mission is too agent kind of a word. அரங்கேற்றம்ன்ற மாதிரி ஒரு விஷயம். அவன் எங்கேயோ கூட்டு போறாங்க. Can we take him somewhere? And then he's passive. He's not involved.
Yeah.
So he said, நல்லா இருக்கு, we'll write that. So there were a lot of moments like that where I asked him for stuff because I felt in the flow of things. And I told him, I want to see what Karji does.
Right.
Other than bringing women into his room and staying in the 5-star hotel suite rooms and being protected in garden and all that, what does he do? I mean, we've talked about land and land grab and all that.
Right.
I want a scene. So then he came up with this power of attorney kind of a moment.
Right.
And I weaved that scene in where Simbu just stands there and shoots the gun also. And the love portion. And then towards the climax, there was lots of stuff that were not there in the film at all. And he had a very big action sequence planned for the climax. I decided to do away with that action sequence. And I just made it like one conversation scene where he tells the Parota Kada gang that enough is enough and I'm walking away from here.
Yeah.
Strangely, the last 5 minutes that people are, discussing was done by Jaymon. He said, but he told me, Vikram எல்லாம் பார்க்கும்போது பயங்கர action இருக்கு எண்ட்ல நீங்க action பண்ணல வேற. I feel maybe. I said, sir, let's finish it. இல்ல ரொம்ப art film சொல்லிடுவாங்க. And in one way he was right. He said, the first day audience, I spoke to him yesterday, the first day audience that comes out from the theatre put the word out that this is a nice, commercial, interesting, entertaining film.
It leaves them on a high.
Yeah. Whereas if we had left it with Simbu, Muthu walking down the steps and saying, Podu, a very Devar Maganish kind of, sorry for the comparison, but, and if you had put Gautham Menon there, then people would have said, art film mari pannirukanga. This word is better than that word as well. So he only suggested that Lucknow, actually we shot an action sequence, you were there. But I decided not to put that in because it seemed like too much to happen,
Right.
So I managed to take that away. So there was a lot of owning the script and weaving my thoughts into the script and cinematic vision to the script.
Right.
Which, not taking anything away from Jaymon, sir.
Sure.
I brought that in completely. And it's my baby in that sense, And even if the film hadn't worked, I'd still say the same thing, Baddy. Like, I know the love portion is being discussed and all that stuff. That was completely me.
Yeah.
See, he had a scene where Simbu walks after a killing, to get his mind off the killing, he walks and he finds her sitting and he goes up. So even the location was very different in Jaymohan's story. I picked this chawl where she's sitting right on the top, you know.
Yeah.
And he goes and meets her, and there's nothing between them, but he just comes, lands up, and she's shocked to see him. And then she says, "You please go." You know, my mother and that line was there. My chitti and father are inside and all that. So he says, "No, I came to talk to you. And ஏன் இங்க விளிம்புல நின்னுட்டு இருக்க? ரொம்ப ஆழமா இருக்கு." And ஆழம் actually meant depth. I converted into that talking about maybe your eyes sort of a thing. And she says, 25 வருஷமா நான் இங்க தான் நின்னுட்டு இருக்கேன். நிறைய வாட்டி குதிக்கணும்னு தோணி இருக்கு. And he just looks at her, and that's all that scene was. After that, when he sees her in the hotel where she has to go into her boss's room, he takes her away from there, walks straight into the house and asks for a hand in marriage.
Right.
And the man says yes. Next shot in his story was they get married. But I weaved a scene in where she tells him, "How can you ask my dad? All that is fine. But what about me? You haven't even asked me that." I felt that point of view was very important. You know, like this woman asking him, "Hello, you have to ask me, and you have to. I need to know who you are and what you do." I can also ask you what you were doing in the 5-star hotel. So all those scenes were worked in by me.
Actually, that scene, since you mentioned that, you kind of have a mini reference to Nayagan, right? Like out there. Let's look at it from this side point of view of Nayagan, because in what happens in Nayagan is Kamal feels sorry for Saranya. Like there's a temple scene, and he doesn't inform her at all, and then he ties the tali on her and gets married to her. And I mean, of course, that's the world that movie is in. So whereas here, you know, I want to look at that same scene but in a different way. So when you were writing this, was Nayagan playing on your mind?
Yeah, and I think only you and I will get that reference, I think, because it was completely that. For me, a lot of moments, like even when Simbu and when Muthu and Pave sit and talk in that scene where he pulls the gun out and says, that's a very Nayaganish frame, except with the ceiling in the backdrop. I actually, so these are images that stay in my head forever. I showed Siddharth yesterday, this was inspired by this particular shot. Where there's a shot of Saranya and Kamal sir sitting with the water on the backdrop. And even the scene where he walks in and asks for a hand, there is a scene like that in Dalapadi actually. So it's actually inspired by, with reference to and all that from Mani sir's work.
I want to ask you your general cinematographic philosophy. In your early films, there was an early Maniratnam feel where there was a little, the frames were classical and like frames, you know, like they were shot, like there was not too much movement and all those kind of things. Like for example, I remember this shot in Kaka Kaka where Surya and Jyotika are standing like by the beach and like at opposite ends of the frame, right? It's like they're just there. I think this is probably when digital cameras started coming in. You started moving your camera a lot. And what happened, it's like, and one of the best things for me is the terrace scene in Needane and Pon Vasantam. You know, that's like a mind-blowing scene that just kind of captures that feel of that moment that's happening, of that fight that's happening, instead of just like a stationary camera kind of a thing. So, like, how did that transition happen? Is it because of the ease of digital cameras, or is there also something inside you that said, like, I want to kind of be a more fluid kind of film taker?
I think we speaking digital cameras, not that those cameras are smaller and they don't occupy much space and all that. It's still pretty much the smaller, yes. No, also a lot of Mani sir's influence, but like if you see Bombay, there's a lot of staging that's done with the camera moving around. And I've studied that film extensively.
No, that's why I said early Mani Ratnam. Like as in, like let's say Nayagan is a very, very classically composed, formal.
Absolutely.
So that's what I said.
I've had lots of conversations with PC sir also about this. Honestly, Barry, and I'm going to say it, I don't think anybody else shoots these films like I do. Technically, I'm saying. Because there's a lot of work that goes on into figuring out how a particular moment should be designed. It's to reach that moment to the actor, and sometimes, in this film especially, you won't even notice the camera. So for the first 15 minutes, till Muthu is on that train, the camera doesn't move
like
at all.
It's stationary,
So sometimes you might feel like, வேற ஏதோ ஒரு படத்துக்கு வந்துட்டோமா அப்படின்ற ஒரு ஃபீல் இருக்கலாம். But the camera doesn't move at all. I felt the moment should start because there's absolutely nothing in his life. Inside the train is when the camera moves first and finds him, and Mehraman sir's voice takes over from there on. From then on, there's a lot of camera movement and stuff. The single shot sequences are all camera moving, but you might not even notice that they're single shot sequences. Which is what works so well, I think, because once you start noticing the camera moving, you know, there's something that you're watching it from outside kind of a thing, but here you're immersed in that. I think there's a lot of thought that goes in from my head as to how a particular shot should be conveyed to the audience. I've studied that as a science, you know, where there's a reason why you say you have to shoot on the same side of the axis, because it's jerky otherwise to the eye. And I follow that
Though
to
there
a
are
T.
people who kind of
break that a lot,
yeah.
and it's done in fashion. There's style about it and all that.
Yeah.
But there is a reason why, and I stick to that 99%, unless there's a technical issue and a geographical issue with the shot. It's a lot of Manisar influence, and it's a lot of looking at Otto's work and figuring out a lot of international films to figure out where the camera moves. I know the signs where in a shot if the camera is moving and if you cut halfway, whatever it is, it's a little jerk. So
Yeah.
you're supposed to time the dialogue and the effect to stop the camera when the dialogue also stops and then cut.
Yeah.
So I plan that a lot. I work on that a lot.
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite instances of that in VTK is when the song is happening. It's a stationary frame between the two of them in the chawl, and he's holding a hand, and you've structured it like almost like an andadi kind of thing. I'm not exactly sure of the words, but it sounds like she's taking off from where he's. It is, yeah, that kind of a thing. It is that, right? After that, you're holding a thing, and then he kind of goes there and this and that and all that kind of stuff. The first cut happens when the kiss happens.
Yeah.
Your cut is exactly when the cut happens in that the movement between the guy and the girl, because they're like tentatively exploring. Okay, I'm this, you're that. I'm this, you're that. I'm this, you're that. And when she decides to act, that's when your cut happens, and that's why that I think you don't feel the break from that single frame,
Correct.
You turn exactly at that moment and the cut happens there. So as the psychology changes, the action changes, the cut changes, So
Correct.
That's something you planned, right?
That was planned, but it was also planned because on location, after the first couple of takes, Simbu was a little uncomfortable with the kiss.
Okay.
It's the only moment in the film where I wanted to see a little bit of a physical moment between them. I was also not sure whether a 13 plus audience will be okay with that, the censor and all that, but I wanted to go into them in single shot as she kisses him.
Okay.
And they stay in the kiss, and then the camera was supposed to go behind to avoid the intensity of the kiss to the audience and a young audience and all that stuff. But Simbu was a little uncomfortable with that kiss. So he cut the shot when she actually kissed him.
Okay.
And I was like, what a magical shot. But Simbu, brother, why did you? I said, illa brother, kiss awkward irukku, venda. Nariya audience feel பண்ணுவாங்க. Then he said that. And then he went off also for half an hour. He was disturbed by that. Siddhi was very uncomfortable because she thought, did she do something wrong? It was a moment that I have on camera actually. And I was like, we were all sitting like this thinking, what a shot, because there was so much of magic before that. And he cut the shot. And I couldn't get my single shot because my idea was to see the kiss come
you wanted
back.
that as part of the thing?
Single, come behind them, see her walking away. It was supposed to be till she goes into a house.
Okay.
That was supposed to be a single design as a single shot. So we were wondering what to do and all that. Then I also remember asking Anthony to come to figure out if we can do something. He said, just take, we'll figure out, he said. Then he came back and kiss mattum lippa venda, cheat panna வைக்கலாம், he said. I said, brother, please, நம்ம எவ்வளவோ பண்ணிட்டோம். இல்ல brother, கண்டிப்பா audience வந்து ஒரு மாதிரி ஃபீல் பண்ணுவாங்க. And I don't think I should do this. Like, I don't want to smoke na, so அந்த மாதிரி இது வேண்டாம், he said. So I said, okay, fine. I couldn't push him beyond that. And so the take that we have right now is the first magical moment up till that kiss, and then the cut of the same shot from here.
So in a way, the cut that I'm praising so much,
honestly, I mean, I don't want it to sound like I'm doing this baddie thing, but super that you actually caught that. We felt that while we cut it. I know Anthony also said this will work better. You know how Gautham, sometimes some things work better.
Yeah.
This works much better because the minute she does that, we cut and we come here, he said. So I'm glad you picked that. I'm saying.
Okay, let's talk again about the destiny, right? I love that line where Radhika says, Sami Patapa, something to that extent. I don't remember the exact words, but Sami Patapa, she says right at the beginning.
Tikkathanga kuda Divo irukum.
Divo irukum. Yeah. So she kind of brings the concept of Devam. She also brings up the concept of astrology, saying that in your horoscope, it's written that you're going to become a murderer. So right then, the question of destiny is introduced into the movie.
I don't believe in that. Jamosa doesn't believe in that.
Right.
It's that woman who says in the Nanganeri Josya Sonna ni kolagara now, and it's the mother's drive to push this boy away from wherever he is, without knowing that she's actually sending him into hell.
And this ties into my earlier thing that this guy is pushed around by destiny right from that early thing. So I was going to ask you how you found Radhika's line, and you just pretty much explained that. So it's her thing that that this guy should
it was there in the script. I loved it when I heard it. And but the placing was different here in the film. When she says that, Anthony said we'll cut to the gun only at that point. Otherwise, in a linear screenplay, you see the gun being taken away when he jumps into the room to see what happened to this man. The gun is taken there itself and kept. But we see that moment only when this line, because because he says Divo ilana pei kuda irukum, and the pei he refers to is the gun.
Yeah, since you mentioned that scene, there is a static shot where you hold it, I think, for almost 10 to 12 seconds. You know, where Radhika and Simbu, they have the talk outside after this uncle dies, that Srimadra Mama dies. She comes saying that, what is this I'm hearing? You know, like somebody's dead. And Simbu says, this is what has happened.
Exactly.
And he says, I'm going to Bombay. So it's cut reaction.
Exactly.
Cut. So that's happening. But after the series of cuts, you hold the frame.
Hold the moment.
And you hold the moment for about like 10 to 12 seconds.
In today's cinema, you don't do that ideally.
Yeah.
But I thought somewhere post-COVID and everything, Queen, we talked about that, right? Where there was liberation to shoot a certain way. I decided I'm only going to do that. So these are the things that maybe in the vision of it might look like lag and slow and all that. But how can she actually say yes without processing what he's saying?
Yeah.
நான் போறேன் போய் தானே ஆகணும் வேற வழி இல்லைல்ல எப்படிடா பாசையும் தரம் எப்படிடா போவே இல்லை போய் தானே ஆகணும் and she processes it. He is also wondering whether he said the right thing.
Yeah.
And only then she can say நீ போயிட்டு வாப்பா திக்கத்தவன் கூட தெய்வம் இருக்கும். Otherwise it will never work for me.
Yeah.
And here I didn't worry about lag and am I holding too long and all that. Even on the edit, Anthony just looked at me. I said, I need this. He said, okay. And you know, so that's how it worked. There was one line that was not there in Jay Mohan's script in that sequence where, who was the Sermadure to her?
Yeah.
They're not related at all.
Yeah.
Mama, he says it, but he's not actually.
Yeah.
So there was one line that I added on location where she says, Malamari nambittu vandane, ippo enna ஏமாத்திட்டீங்களே அப்படின்னு. So we suggest that there could have been a connect between the two of them.
Right.
And Jay Mohan says, when I showed him the film, I told him, sir, this is what I've added. He just smiled.
Yeah. So, you know, actually, that's what's interesting because even later, when the first Annachi, I mean, there are different levels of Annachis, right? The Parota Kada Annachi, when he asks, is Sermadra Mama from your dad's side or mom's side? Somebody closes the door.
Yeah.
So we don't hear the conversation. So it's like there's still
that was planned, yeah.
So apart from Destiny, there is another inanimate character in this story, which you mentioned a little while ago, and that's the gun, right? So the gun has both a philosophical subtext and a practical use in this movie. The philosophical thing you just mentioned, that once it kind of catches hold of you, it's never going to let you go. So that's the philosophical side. But there's also the practical side of the gun, because later, as he says, he is a guy right from the beginning who has a great deal of self-respect. He does not like to bow down to anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's the gun that gives him that respect from others. Ilana, he says, everybody treats you like a sack of shit because he doesn't like to bow down to anyone. That's like a fantastic thought because that makes the gun almost a character in the movie.
Yeah.
When we first see that character, that is the gun, during the call, when he's on the call, he sees the gun. And then the next time when he climbs behind and comes through the window, that's when he sees the gun. The same suitcase has like bundles of notes. It also has this gun. So this is a guy who desperately needs money because his dad's hospitalization and the loan taken for his education, that's like his mother is like burdened under those debts. So the easiest thing for him would have been to take the money because that would have been, you know, what he needs right then. But he takes the gun.
Yes.
Now I want a Gautham Menon voiceover that gets into Simbu's head and says, why நான் அந்த பணத்தை பார்த்தேன் இந்த கன்னை பார்த்தேன் I want you to start like that.
That money was placed there exactly for this thought. So when I'll tell you, I'll come another way to this. So when we didn't show it linear, and when Anthony decided we'll place it when Radhika says that,
right.
My only thought was,
Radhika says what?
Radhika says Dikkatavan kuda Devam.
Yeah.
He says Devam illana pay. When we cut away to the shot of him taking the gun, putting it, and he does this and all that stuff. I told Anthony, my only worry with this edit is people will not realize that he didn't touch the money. I want people to clearly realize that there was money which could have sorted everything for him.
Yeah.
And there's a gun. And he picked only the gun. Even my assistant said, sir, adu poidumo. I said, no, we've shown the money. And Anthony prefers that this comes here. So we just hope, and I'm very sure that they'll think that he only picked the gun. Because he doesn't seem to have any money later and all that stuff, right? My point was, he's not a thief. And that's why this other scene also works to a large extent. That scene also was not there in the script. When I added the scene where Pavai tells Muthu, நீ யாரு உனக்கும் அந்த 5-star ஹோட்டலில் வேலை இல்லைல்ல, பரோட்டா கடையில் தான் உனக்கு வேலை.
Yeah, what are you doing
அவ்வளோ
here?
பணம் தரேன்னு சொல்கிற, how can you just ask for my hand? You tell me what you are, make me like you and all that. So when I had this scene, then there has to be a following scene where Simbu talks to Pave. So I called Jayamohan sir again and said, so there has to be a scene where Simbu tells Pave what his ideology is.
Yes.
So he said, Nalla irukku, and he wrote the scene again, which again I, weave my thing into, and that's when he says, இது இருந்தா வந்து எனக்கு தைரியம் கொடுக்குது, எவனும் என்ன சாக்கு மாதிரி மிதிக்க மாட்டான், he says.
Yeah.
So in this particular moment, the voiceover in my head was, I think நான் திருடன்ல,
Yeah.
மானத்தோட வாழணும், இங்கிருந்து போகணும், முதல்ல பணத்தை எடுத்து போனாலும் யாராவது தேடி வருவானுங்க, ஆனால் இது வச்சுக்கலாம், என்னமோ தெரியல, இந்த லெட்டரும் இது வச்சுக்கலான்ற மாதிரி ஒன்று. I think that's all.
So what does this uncle write in the letter? See, one thing that I really like, reminded me of your sensibility, is that if somebody is going from A to B, if another director is doing just the A to B transition, under that A to B transition, you have a lot of like A to A prime, A double prime, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I forgot my mathematics, but I'm trying to kind of, like kind
okay.
of. So, for example, you could have just said that Sir Madra Mama got this call where he is being suspected of doing something like some treachery or something like that, right? So you could have just killed him, like he's saying, shit, I can't go back to Bombay again, I die. Afterwards, he writes a letter, he wakes up Simbu in the middle of the night, and then he says, give this letter, because he's kind of mentally made up his mind that he's going to die,
Yes.
that he's going to this thing, but he wants that letter to go either whatever happens, and he repeats it also. It's like he makes sure that this boy understands that letter is very important.
Letter.
Get that letter to kind of thing, and then the suicide happens. What did he write in that letter?
So it was never going to be mentioned in the film. That much, let me tell you. It is
So
not
if you
like,
don't want to say, I'm
no.
understand.
It's not like we wanted to, we deliberated whether it was Jayamohan sir's script also didn't have it.
Right.
I also decided it's a great idea to not reveal what is written in the letter.
Right.
We stayed on SK reading the letter, and immediately he says, "Sari, ne makali, mela kuttu poda." So the other guy asks him also, "Enna nachi, sollama kollama, Sir Madhu da letter la ellathiyum eluditaare. Adu mattum illa, Arvalukku thala koduthu chaava aalu venunle was the first line that was there.
Yeah.
I took that out because it is too obvious that Arvalukku thala koduthu chaava na something is crazily happening here.
Right.
So I just said, நமக்கு ஆளு வேணும்ல டே, தீர வந்துட்டே இருக்கணும்ல, இவனும் பார்த்தல சண்டை கோழி மாதிரி இருக்கான். That is what we kept down the film. But what is there in the letter is, the only way that I can redeem myself from this accusation is by killing myself. Please protect my family, and I'm dying. That's what is in the letter.
That's the thing that goes
That's the thing in the letter, which definitely would have moved these guys, because in his letter, if he had still said, forgive me, this, that, nobody's going to believe him. But he says, the only way I can redeem this and I can make this proper, and for you guys to believe me, is by killing myself, because I owe everything to Karji, and there's no way I let him down. I will kill myself, and please protect my family after this.
Yeah. And I thought, I mean, I met Siddhartha Nuni, who shot Lucia earlier, which is how I know him. I met him on the set, and I thought there was a lot of details that were captured very well. I mean, of course, this is the entire team, but one of the things that I really liked about the way the whole hanging scene was staged was, you don't usually see a man shit himself after he hangs, that's but the back of his veshti is stained and kind of a thing, like a real sense of detail there that that you kind of find.
We wanted to do that. We toned it down actually on post, and Simbu touches the veshti and pulls his hand because it's soaked in urine and all that stuff, right? So, but then it was too much, so we actually toned it down a bit and just kept it in that back shot sort of thing. It was thought of.
There are subtitles for some parts, and there are subtitles that aren't for other parts.
So initially, when Simbu hides the gun and walks out, and the police are talking in Hindi, right? We didn't want, Simbu doesn't understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So we thought the audience also should go through what Simbu is going through.
Because we're traveling with him. Yeah.
Later onwards, the subtitles, when Simbu is not there on screen and the Malayalis are talking, we put subtitles.
Right.
So that was a call that we took.
I have one thing, this may be a completely accidental thing, but I just wanted to ask you why. So finally Simbu lands in Bombay. He keeps showing this address and says, people say, I don't know. And then finally he finds a Tamilian who knows what that address is. So he puts him in a cab and he says, Simbu ketta 500 rupa kudu, give him $500. To the cab driver, he says, sirf 500 rupees dega. He will give you only $500. There's a tonal difference there, because give $500 versus this guy is only going to give you $500, better take it, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So is that guy also part of this circle?
And he also says, Polachu Kadanda Papon to Simbu.
Right.
He is there in part 2. He's a guy Simbu picks because he's the first guy who told him Polachu Kadanda Papo.
Wow.
And in Lucknow, we actually shot with him, but it's not there in the film right now. We decided, okay, the scene where actually Simbu finds this guy and brings him as an important scene somewhere. Okay,
Wow,
so unknown
okay,
character.
yeah,
If it was a
because-
popular actor, you would have noticed
Right,
that.
right.
But since we're not able to keep that entire scene, he actually drives the car in the Lucknow scene when Aditya Bhaskar is sitting on the left side.
Okay.
There is a shot of him turning to Simbu and saying, Aramanatla Poila Anachi, he says.
Okay.
So that was a touch. We wanted that actually.
Okay,
So,
because that
yeah.
Sif kind of threw me off. It's like, it's almost like he's ordering the cab driver, you know, like this guy's only giving you that much. So
I don't know if anybody else would notice this, Barry. Seriously, I'm saying.
where Simbu goes into Malabar hairdressers or whichever the barber shop is that,
Yeah,
that Sridharan
it's 5 years
is
later.
running
His
running
own,
right
yeah,
now, his own
correct,
thing.
yeah.
He goes in and he sees him. Of course, they know each other. They've been talking like each other, and like it's almost like you have the two gangs. You put parallels to them, right? It's like there's an informer in this gang, there's an informer in this
Yeah.
gang. There's something else in this gang, there's something else in this gang. So there's like always a parallel thing. And one of the most important parallels is that a newbie from nowhere comes to the Tamil gang, which is Muthu, and a newbie from nowhere comes to this gang, which is Sridharan, and they both meet in the like in the railway station, and that's when the others come and take him away. The crucial difference, though, is that Sridharan is willing to accept everything that comes his way, you know, including being sexually abused and everything like that. So he's not one of those guys who says dignity is very important or whatever it is. He just wants to survive. See, this whole movie for me, in a way, is about various people surviving. Because even Pavai is like, she's very practical about that scene. Which is what really worked for me, where she says, well, my boss asked me to sleep with him. I've got to do that because otherwise I won't get money. And she's not like, oh God, my boss asked me to sleep with him. You know, it's like oh, she's all rot and, you know, like she's kind of like Ponna Arna Pawan, like none of that crap. You know, she's like, boss, I need to live in the city. I need to go and sleep with my boss. That's what I'm going to do. You know, this whole movie is about survival that way. It's not just the other guys, it's even the women who are like that. So that's how Sridharan is. Muthu is the other kind. He's like, I'm not going to live that life. For me, self-respect is very important. So when the time comes to use the gun, he uses the gun, his hands are stained with blood. Whereas even when Sridharan gets a chance to kill the Siddiq character, you think that's when he'll reclaim his masculinity. I'm putting it in quotes because earlier he's used as a woman and all that, right?
Yeah.
You think that he's going to, you know, bring that blade, which he does. But the girl, even there, he doesn't get his hands stained with blood. It's the girl who kills him, right?
Yeah.
So he's a man who remains untouched by blood throughout. And yet at the end, you get the feeling that he's the happier man. And he has his wife and kid, whereas Simbu has lost his kid. He has only his wife. So that's kind of how the whole thing goes. I really wished for a story kind of which paralleled these two in a way, you know, that kind of... how did you see him as a kind of a mirror image, Sridharan as a kind of mirror image of Muthu?
That's the first thing that I liked about Jayamohan's story. It was always a story about two men.
Yeah.
There was always a parallel. In fact, I'm not saying there were more moments for him, but there were a couple of moments in the second half which I didn't want to, because and I wanted Simbu to like really stand out. And Simbu's film, Simbu's fans, all that, you know, somewhere you have to, Simbu has to be happy. All that had to be taken into account here. Neeraj knows that too. So it was always a story of exactly what you said. And Sridharan is always looking to get away also. Once when he says tappichu poilla, Simbu says inime na tappichu pora mari illa.
The first time Simbu suggests it,
and they're not able to.
Yeah, he's not able to. But the second time Sridharan suggests it, and Simbu says, now I can't.
Inime tappichu pora mari illa. And there's a moment where he looks at him. It's almost like he's talking to somebody who's now settled down, accepted that this is life kind of a thing.
Right.
The last sequence, you're right. He's in a good space. They're probably hiding from that murder and everything. Whatever it is, they've killed a Kuti Bai kind of a character. Yeah. The wife has, and then he's moved away to Lucknow. We suggest it's in Lucknow only, and life is okay there. They're running a shop, and things are okay there. And comes the man who can change all that again. So, which is why when Simbu himself, actually Simbu takes the first call to not recognize him.
Yeah.
He didn't say, hey Sridhara, Malayalata, he didn't say that. Which is why Sridharan also is like, what is happening? Why isn't he? And when Simbu just stays quiet, Sridharan realizes that if this man's cloud comes if they come under that cloud, their life is going to go back to that again.
Yeah.
Which Simbu also knows. That's the beauty of that scene. This is the scene that is always there in Jaymohan's script.
Yeah,
it is supposed to end like this.
That's a lovely scene. Yeah,
where, you know, my shadow shouldn't be here anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why he says, "La, onnulla," and he walks off. And when his wife asks him, "Who's this? Do you know him?" He says, "Arila, I don't know him."
Yeah. So that was enormously touching because you almost felt that they were like going to bond or become buddies or something like that. But they were always same yet different. You know, they were like traveling on parallel tracks.
Yeah.
You know, and then one guy always tainted with blood and one not.
Yeah.
And he's kind of that moment of humanity. I think Simbu looks into the mirror. Isn't that right? It's like
that's why it is staged with the mirrors and all that stuff.
Yeah. So
mirror images.
Yeah. So that mirror images was like he looks into that mirror and he's like you see that in Simbu's eyes that you kind of okay, wow. But then you see that spark of recognition.
I thought Simbu was brilliant in that scene. Yeah. Like compared to the rest of the film also. This one, I told him, I said something about this moment I'm not able to get out of.
Because there's a spark of recognition and then it dulls.
Yeah.
You know, you really see that in his face.
I said all this while we were talking part 2, but after having shot this scene with you, I told him that day at the barber shop, after having shot this scene with you, I want to explore what you are in part 2. Where does Muthu reach? Is he devilish? Is he like still the Muthu that left from Tiruchendur? Something about his expression. He says, "Pannunga, neenga eludunga bro, na pandren," he said.
So we just talked about the scene where the first time Muthu says, "Tell Sridharan, let's leave, let's escape." But then the gun thing happens at the interval point and Sridharan is the one stuck in the train and he's brought back, right? That's again destiny. But why does he say the second time that now it's too late? Now, Ippo, I have to stay here. Why does he say that?
I think because he's seen a lot more comfort now. He thinks he doesn't have to. Respect comes in, and somewhere he thinks he just has to be a bodyguard sort of to this guy. He's not still in the thick of things right at that point.
Right.
Yes, there is a moment where because Karji was attacked, he has to protect his boss. For him, it's self-defense now.
Yeah.
There was a line which said, so there's no reason for him to go after these guys. It's probably in self-defense, right? Which is what he was doing, protecting his boss.
Right.
Then there was a moment where Karji would have told him, "Tiruppi attack pannu, nee poda." So he has to go.
Right.
So he's driftwood now, he's floating. Now he wants to see where it will take him. Okay. And will there be a way out? Pave is that way out.
Yeah.
Which is why he goes back, he stands there again, stalks her again maybe, you know, and she talks to him, and somewhere in that one moment there's a transformation where it ends up in a kiss.
Yeah.
So
no, and also where the time that he decides to leave is only because of Pave.
Correct.
Because he realizes that they may be in danger.
Yeah.
And that's when he actively decides.
And she is, right? Because he went thinking boss is calling. There must be a reason why he's calling.
Yeah.
He tells her, and she also, "Enna koleya," she says. That's so, you know, like he also thinks, "Oh my God, she's become so casual about it."
Right.
But then he says, "No, I'll come back." And when he comes back, she's not there. Which is why even that scene, he thinks maybe she's gone next door or maybe she's gone to her mother's house, you know. When that guy comes and says some people took her in a car and it was no zabardasti and all, they were just talking to each other and they left.
Yeah.
But he put her in danger. And that's when he decides, you know, this is enough, let me get out of here.
Okay, I'm going to bring up some critic stuff, which you probably are going to call it over-analysis or overthinking or whatever it is. But is there a red versus blue thing happening in this movie, color-wise?
Yeah, there is.
There is. Okay, thank God. Okay,
there
so
is,
this is because gangster-wise, Muthu's shirts, the walls, sometimes they're all red or shades of red.
Yes.
Whereas in Pave's space, the walls, actually the scene where she tells him that you should ask my permission, her sari or salwar, that's blue, the walls are blue, his shirt is blue. It's almost like when he enters her world, that's blue.
And when he brings her to his house,
she's wearing a red sari. That's deliberate,
very
right?
planned. There's one scene where after that Arangetram scene where he does nothing, and he comes in and looks at Appukutti, and Appukutti says "enna" and all this stuff. And in the morning he wakes up. If you notice in that scene, there's a slight change, and there's a thing about should I get out of here without saying it. You'll see a lot of blue lungis.
Yeah.
It was purposely staged like that in a dark sort of scenario where there is a let me get out kind of a thing.
Yeah.
The skies are opening up maybe, and there's some clarity.
Yeah.
He takes a walk, finds Sridharan, and says, "Let's get out of here." Sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so that was deliberate.
In my head and a few other people's head. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
When Muthu leaves his house with his mother, right, and his sister, the calendar says 2015. Any particular reason for that year?
We wanted it to be present day at the end, which is why we say Indra. And this film story takes place in 2015-16. The
So-
Parota Kada sequence are 16.
Okay.
So we purposely planned it that people should clearly get that this is 2015 because some of the clothes and everything, we didn't want people to think it's 80s or 90s.
Right.
And that phone scene was very crucial, right? Video call over phone.
Yeah.
We don't want people to think it was 2003, 4. Already somebody called me and asked me, 2003, 4 lala video call rincha. I said, why do you think it's 2004? Chandramukhi kaam kiringle padathula.
Yeah.
Which is why there was a dialogue also in that scene where, I mean, this is spoon feeding, which I don't like, but there's a boy who walks in opening the door and he says, Macha, 11 varsham kalichi the padam maradi paakrom, enna kootam paathalla and all that. So, I mean, people still don't get it sometimes.
Yeah. So, a question about Muthu's feelings. You mentioned the phone video call scene. Now, that is a wonderful moment, and you've said that was Rahman's suggestion that we make it a big song, right? That Malipu song.
Yeah.
Now, that song collectively represents not just that one man's yearning, but the yearning of all these men who have left their families and have come away. So, that through that one man, we feel the yearning of this entire bunch of people who've come to a different city for survival and they're missing their families. That's the one time you feel this guy's yearning as well. Muthu is yearning as well. One thing that I missed in the movie was I didn't see it outside of this particular thing, because there is one lovely scene where in that Sermadra Mama's house, they sit down to eat, and he puts some of his chicken curry or whatever it is. It's like curry, and he puts it on his sister's plate. So it's like there's obviously a loving, caring older brother like relationship that's there. But that never kind of is like, he doesn't call his home. He doesn't like, the only time we see the sister and mother is when they visit and he introduces Pave and then they go back, kind of a thing. And then much later they see that he's become a don or whatever it is, that kind of a thing.
Even in Jaymon's script, even the money order scenes were not there actually.
Okay, all right.
And I asked him, he said, no, there's no need for it. Assistant directors ketangla, he'll ask me. I said, listen, I felt that whatever it is. So I thought maybe in my head that he's seeing some semblance of crime around him.
Right.
The mother said, Ni poitu vapa, she suggested Sermadurai and all that stuff. And now he sees some blood, he sees some beating up. He knows there's some murky stuff happening here. He might not want to tell his mother and, be in that zone with her, I feel. So the only thing he probably does is send money every month.
Okay.
So all our transition points are first when 6,000 rupees comes.
And then 25 or
Then
something.
25,000 rupees comes. So I thought that would be a nice way to suggest that the film is, that story also is moving on, sort of a thing.
Cool, yeah.
And in the end, when the wedding happens, obviously he will call. He also takes her into the Parota Kada and shows them the place, meets the girl's parents and all that stuff. And then they walk around, buy saris, and they're at the wedding and they leave. In the end, there's a moment where she reads from the paper that the Char Ungli Goshtin Taliban Tamilana and all that. So she knows, oh my God, kind of a thing. So I thought this is all.
That's enough. Yeah. Now, we talked about that under that big broad arc, you have lots of sub arcs, right? Like how things progress. For example, in that Ser Madra Mama is suicide. You could just say, or even when Radhika says, no, I don't want you to stay in this place anymore. After that guy comes and threatens him, right? Like, you burnt down my forest, so like you have to pay X amount of money, $5,000. She could have said, no, let's not stay. We should not stay here anymore. Go off to Bombay and be with like Ser Madra Mama will take you to Bombay or whatever it is. So actually, that would have still worked, because the point is to get him from here to there. But you want to find an interesting place for him to make that decision about the gun. So you take him through this detour of, and it's another elaborate detour. It's like, for a film of, even if it's 3 hours, it takes about what? We spent about 10 minutes in that place?
Yeah.
Like roughly. Those kinds of decisions that you make, that's what makes this movie breathe, right? It's what making this like so nice and expansive, novelistic, kind of a thing. Did you ever think in your mind that, ஐயோ the lag and சொல்லுவாங்களா, will people today have the patience? We are supposed to be in a generation where the KGF kind of editing is what people want, and that's the big things. Did you ever doubt yourself at all?
No, I didn't.
There was no doubt.
There was no doubt at all. I wanted it to breathe, like you said, exactly my thoughts, and it was very novelish in that sense, and that was a short story also.
Right.
somewhere in my head, I want to do justice to that. And we ourselves were laughing, saying when people come and watch this film, they'll think, "Oh, tappana screen vandutom pola irukku. Gautham Vasde Menon padam nadichu vera edho padathukku vanduttomன்ற feel irukattum." Because the village and the house and the way they talk and the shots are all very static and all that stuff. I was never worried about that. My worries are always after release as to whether it's reached the audience and all that.
That's
And whenever the producer and maybe Simbu watch the film, his team and all, so that's whatever it is, an outside point of view of watching the film for the first time, right? The producer had no idea what the scenes are like.
Yeah.
It's first time he's sitting and watching the film, and his tastes are very different in that sense. He likes fast action films, commercial films, and all that. He also didn't say anything about these portions. He said, "Romba nalla irukku sir," is what he said. So that gave me a little more confidence in that sense.
Right.
But I was never worried about it. Neither my team told me trim these parts. They were only trying to get me to finish the interval, a little faster, and maybe get to the climax a little faster. That's all.
there's a strange mirror shot that again when he's a weaker version of Muthu and he's trying to break down the door to get to Sermadra Mama, he hurls himself against that door, right? And the door won't break. And so he has to do this elaborate thing of go behind and come and all that kind of stuff. Much later, after he's become Muthu the thing, and he has to kick open the door to his house, he's able to do what heroes typically do, which is like, kick the door, and then he's able to do that.
Yeah.
In a very non-dialogue-y way, those two, that echo scene, that same thing happening later in the way that we're used to, gave me an idea of the man he was versus the man he's become. Was it an accidental thing or was that?
It was accidental, but having watched the film later at the edit, I was thinking whether, there is a connect here, and maybe it's wrong also. There he wasn't able to, but here he is. And I think somebody said, but there's desperation here, the way he is here and stuff like that. He was just a passerby sort of thing.
Right.
He's not in it. He still doesn't know. But here he knows a second she was here with him and the next second the door is shut.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more desperation,
Yeah.
In fact, I remember telling Simbu, just move back and send your leg into that door. I need to see that, Simbu. Because the first couple of times he didn't do it like how I wanted to. And he smiled and he said, okay, fine. So I remember saying that to him.
Did you worry that the interval point where Simbu finally shoots and takes the gun and shoots? I mean, I think this must be the first film that actually demonstrates that Chekhov's gun's principle, where you actually say, if you show a gun, then you have to use the gun.
Yeah.
You literally hide the gun and then you shoot it.
Pick it up again.
But did you worry that that scene is going to make the audience expect a more heroic second half?
So the ideal first half break in Jaimohan sir's script was Karji saying, "Nee enku ninugriya," that scene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then they come outside and tell him, "Rattakara padinjirukla, solla pona nee avar paadugaapu illa, avaru dhaan unak paadugaapu."
Right.
They leave him there and that's the first half. In fact, when he saw the film also, Jaimohan sir said, "Epriyavadhu inge vekka mudiyuma," he said. I said, "Length also." And we generally felt a high here
Yeah.
to see him pick up the gun and
Sure.
shoot and stop
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
My other worry was AYM also had a similar gun moment at the interval where he gets the gun and shoots this guy and we go into him.
Yeah.
There, it was destined for him to be the cop that you didn't like at all about. But here also there's a transformation. But Anthony and everybody else, and the way we put that scene together, I also thought, okay, there's no way. But Jaimon's worry was from here, they might expect something really big,
Yeah.
But whereas if you leave it there, it gets toned down a bit. It's all about audience expectations. I said, sir, it's okay. I'm not making anything, it's completely different from anything that I've made. So let's not worry about that. I think this will work as a standalone high point sort of a thing.
Hypothetically speaking, when you say that that's happened and the gun has gone off, right? He still becomes this person controlled by destiny. He goes back to being a passive protagonist. He goes back to that Karja Nashi. He kind of he's a thing. Earlier, you introduced the fact that Simbu Apukuti tells Simbu that we are all cog in a machine. We are all like little screws in a machine. We don't know what the big picture is. Did you ever feel that in this movie? I'm not talking about part 2 because for me, the movie ends when he comes down the stairs of the Parota Kada. That's pretty much where the movie ends.
Yeah.
The rest I see as a setup for a sequel. I kind of see it as
True.
This is what's going to happen kind of a thing. So for me, this gentle moment where he comes down the Parota Kada stairs is where the movie ends.
Is where
right?
it's supposed to end for us also, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
So in this, you did not see him becoming like if I come from there to here, why not see where I can go from here to there? That never.
No, it was not there. Very clearly, in the discussion of Jay Mohan sir, idila kaam ke vanda. There was no need to go there at all. And even in his first draft, once he walks out, so the actual staging was not in the Parota Kada at all.
Right.
Him coming back and sitting there was a call that we took here. In Jay Mohan sir's script, as he's on the run with Pave on the bike, they surround him on a bridge or something like that, and then there's a shootout that happens, and he shoots at Eseki, and that it was there in the script that he shoots at his gun, so which is the only thing that I kept. And there's a conversation where he says, I can take all of you out, but I don't want this. Let me go, and I didn't kill Karji.
Right.
And they just stand there, and he throws the gun into the bridge, into the water, and he rides off from there. I decided it might be a nice cinematic touch to bring him back into the Parota Kada. It was actually Anthony's call. He said, why not come back here only? So then we decided, okay, we'll stage it there and put the gun on top there and all that stuff.
Right.
But it's never meant to show you what happens. I know the story of part 2. There are plot points that we've been discussing. I know what happens on that bike ride after they go away from there is when part 2 begins actually.
Yeah.
Something happens right there, which changes his mind about giving it all up and moving on sort of a thing. But we didn't want to show anything there. Right. And here also, there were training moments and everything once he's assigned to become his bodyguard, which I decided to do away with.
Right, right.
So it was never meant to be beyond that. We always wanted to stop here, and then 6 months later, see, I'll give you small parallels, okay? Like people who train with me as ADs and stuff, right? Once they work on a film, they can move on to become their own filmmakers. But while they're trying and everything, if let's say in the next film I call one of them and say, you be the chief associate on this film, and so there's a little bit of everything is there. I mean, I don't want to make it sound banal as comfort and a better salary and all that, but there's a position that you've come to, right? So then the thought of trying for that film sort of wanes for that 6 months.
Yeah.
Let me go through this process till that happens. That's the journey that I'm talking about. That's why we put that line also in a 5-star hotel day, Kasakada. Yeah. So it is not about 5-star hotel at all. It's about being that man's bodyguard and taking care of him and all that. Yeah. But we put that 5-star hotel in because that's where your life is going to be, from that dump that you were in with 35 people. Right. At least here you can sleep on the floor in a 5-star hotel.
Yeah.
So that's what probably gets him to sort of stick on for a bit more. And then the gun sort of gives him that respect wherever he goes. That respect automatically, when he has to open the door for Karji, there are 2 other people who might open the door for him.
Yeah.
So somewhere it's that sort of keeps him going till he meets Pave, I think.
The reason I asked you that question was because, again, that comes back to the destiny aspect of it. Because the one active decision that he makes in the movie in his professional life, the Pave is his own decision. That's different. I'm not talking about that. Yeah. But in his professional life, where you're talking about a piece of wood floating around on the stream, till the end of the movie, he is that piece of wood floating around a larger stream, or the screw in the machine or whatever. Yes. The one active decision that he does is, I'm going to walk away from all this, and he climbs down the stairs, and then bam, 5 years later, and he's like, that big beard, and they're calling him Anachi.
Yeah.
Is that also destiny, or is that an active decision, or is that too early to talk about it right now?
Destiny.
That's also destiny. Okay, that's not his own active.
No, it's destiny.
Okay, all right. Destiny. So you're continuing the destiny theme.
Yeah, complete. That's till the end.
Okay.
Till the end. And there's a reason why Sridharan is a parallel right through.
Okay. But Sridharan is coming back in.
Yeah. There's a reason why in this film also he's there.
Right.
And the last scene also they kind of not recognize each other.
Right.
He plays a very important part in the second story.
Now, when you're subverting so much in the gangster genre, Gautham, which is, you're even showing the hero pimping for the boss, which we never see. A hero won't do that, Why didn't you just say, let's do away with a love story? Because you're saying Jaimon's wife told that there's no love in the story.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, did you think that since I'm anyway changing so much, or letting the movie breathe in its own way, making this man a creature of destiny, why not do away with this and let's see what happens?
See, personally, I wanted it. It was not there in the story.
You wanted the love story?
I wanted the love story. It was not there, as extensive as what it's like here. I missed it. And then when he himself said, go for it, I thought, okay, let's go for it. And today I know it's working, and I'm not saying this just like that because there's another section of audience that's watching it and responding to that. Women audience, maybe, and a lot of other people have liked that portion in what might seemingly be an otherwise dry sort of a take on a gangster story. I don't know. So I know it's worked to a large extent, and maybe some people didn't, get it at all. But that's okay, right? With every film that's there, I think I wanted it personally.
No, and I also like your writing in that part. There's nothing wrong
Yeah,
with
yeah,
having
yeah.
the love story as such. I just wanted to know if you considered not having it.
No,
That's all.
couple of creative calls I'm not sure of. Like I decided to do a lip sync for that song.
Yeah.
Like I know somebody also told me, like in Nayagan, you don't see Vendhu Naikar actually lip syncing.
Yeah.
Even in that holy song and all that, right? Niyoru Kadal Sangeetham and all. There's never a lip sync so beautifully done and all that. But here, I wanted to treat this gangster film in like a musical area only here.
Yeah.
And I thought it'll be conversation that's perceived to be musically, lyrically done
Right.
on screen. That's what I want the audience to be used to that song routine, right? So unlike a song, but I thought let's do lip sync. In retrospect, probably the only thing that I would change about this film is not having done the lip sync there.
Right.
And even in the other song, we had them, Tali and everything as a lip sync.
Lip sync, yeah.
I love that style. And maybe that's the only thing that's a lot more Gauthamish that I should have probably taken off, I feel.
That works.
I mean, I've been getting some feedback saying lip sync illama panirkalama and all that. So I thought, it struck me also while we were filming itself.
Right.
4 takes for that kiss to happen. I remember discussing saying she's also maybe not, so they're not really opening their mouth like in a musical style, right?
Yeah.
So then everybody said, no, sir, it looks like conversation that they're actually in the form of a song.
Right.
Shall we do a take without lip sync? But then Simbu was so thinking about the kiss that I think at that point we were only focused on getting the shot done. Right?
Okay.
So
The Appukutti character, he becomes a sort of like a little guide early on. But he also becomes a bit of a mouthpiece. I personally felt that maybe he spoke a little too much about this, setting it up for us, when the rest of the time, the movie itself was giving us a lot of information.
I don't know, Baddy. I'm also getting feedback saying we still, அவங்க ரெண்டு பேரும் என்ன பண்றாங்க, Karji and Kutibai. What is the war between them?
Oh, so you felt you needed that?
Yeah. So it's only because of that.
Okay.
This scene was there only to explain to a large extent. I also have a problem with this scene actually because I thought there's no need to say it. But then today I'm also getting some feedback saying we're still not sure what the machinery is, what the problem is. So
Right.
I feel in that context it works.
It worked,
right?
okay.
Yeah.
We talked about the static frames at the beginning, but then even the moving frames, when you're talking about the moving camera, when the camera begins to move, you mentioned that invisible camera, right? It's like, for example, one of my favorite shots in the movie is that Malipu song. Everybody's jumping and dancing, and there's no headroom or anything else because it's like the whole screen is filled with that energy of the bodies, and it's so claustrophobic, and yet everybody's like you get a sense of, my God, this is such a crowded space, and everybody's like, there's no headroom at all. You cut off the top of that thing. Like while that song is happening, Appukutti hears a police siren. So the same, without cutting, you go. The Anthony must have been like, "Give me some space to cut," So you go. The Appukutti follows till the balcony,
goes
comes back and then Simbu comes out.
Yeah.
Again, was that a planned thing?
Yeah, completely.
Okay.
It was designed once we got the idea of the song. I called Tamare and told her these are the lyrics.
Right.
It should be about longing, being away for so long. And you have to really pick at Tamare. That's when she comes up with magic, right? So so much of explanation.
I'm doing this on camera. I've been telling her I'm her greatest fan, and I really want to like worship her on camera and just like all the wonderful stuff that she's written, but she keeps refusing. So please tell her that I would love to do an interview with her.
No, we should really. I think you should.
She's like, this is most amazing. Yeah. Special chemistry happens when she works on your films. I don't know what that is. It's like maybe because it's the you go back such a long way or something like that. But
and also there's a lot of discussion.
Right.
At Unearthly Hours, there's a lot of discussion where and this particular song, right? It was supposed to be like a video call that comes, and Simbu realizes that there's a lot of longing and people being away. They also have families and they also have a heart and all that stuff, right? So Rahman sir suggested, I think it's a great moment for a song.
Right.
I leave it to you, he said. So I immediately called Tamare and said, can we write something based on all this? This is what the scene is, but then can we write all that? And she said, yeah, let's do this. Then I told Rahman sir, he said, you write lyrics for me and then I'll probably try and work the tune out. But then he also came up with something immediately and he sent it. And in his first tune, that tring, tring and all was there, which I toned down a bit and all that. Then once we decided to film it, I was very clear that I don't want to see the woman singing in the song.
Right.
It is only supposed to be like passing of the phone.
It's almost like a photograph.
That's all you see. And whenever the phone is seen on frame, you'll see.
Yeah.
We actually shot that with somebody and put that onto the phone. And here it is supposed to be this 40 men inside one room, and the camera has to. I also knew that the next scene that I'm going to shoot is when Masanam dies, and the camera will start from that dress that he's bought for his child and travel. So I told Brinda, since the next scene is going to be this, can you move from here and choreograph in such a way that Simbu will come up only halfway through the song.
Right.
That Pattatala also first was a female chorus when Rahman sir sent it to me. And I knew there's no way a female chorus can be there in the song. So I called sir back and said, sir, can I make this into a male chorus? And I remember discussing with Rahman sir's team and changing the lines to how men would sing that chorus.
Right.
Picking up from lyrics from the tune, from the song, and we designed in such a way that Simbu will come up only halfway through. And even the way he will dance will be very Muthu and not Simbu. So these are the cues to Brinda. And then she took over.
Yeah.
She kind of semi-choreographed the scene in a sense without dance, where people will get up and everything.
Yeah.
And I'll show you the making, all of us standing outside in one corner looking, and only the camera operator on the gimbal walking around like how we'd asked him to, showing everybody's faces.
Right.
And going out and coming back in and going out again. So
Right.
it was brilliantly done, and it's one of the best scenes in the film, I think. Yeah.
So the way that segue happens, right? That is from the song to the event.
Yeah.
That actually, like, the screenplay flows like that static camera, And I'll tell you one scene that really, really worked for me. One series of scenes, that is, if you just had the Chandramukhi viewing sequence, nothing would have happened. Like, it's a bunch of Tamilians in Bombay. They're going and watching Talevar kind of like having a moment, and they're just enjoying it. Nothing happens. There's actually a reason for that film, because the film starts, then during the interval, there is the urinal scene happens, and then this guy insults the other guy. So the film starts again, second half, the fight happens, then a retaliation to that fight happens, and then that becomes your reason to introduce the Senduran character.
Yeah.
So that flow is so beautiful, because you're not really, it's not just I went and saw this movie and I enjoyed it and I came back.
Yeah.
That movie leads to like this series of events kind of a thing. So tell me, when you think of these things, that's what I meant by sub-arcs, right? When you write under the main thing is, I want them to generally have a moment, could itself be a Rajini celebration moment, could just be its own thing.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that. But from that you start and take us on an arc to that Senduran character, which is of course classical screenwriting. I'm not telling that you've reinvented the wheel or something like that, but how does this kind of come about?
I was very sure of this, but during the last few rounds of edit, people suggested, why don't we take out this and then just bring Senduran in, not because he knew that somebody pulled a gun out, change the dialogues on dubbing and stuff like that. It's the final round of discussion to reduce length. I said no, because I found a connect with these scenes. I found a beauty in the way these scenes.
Right.
Also, more than all this, there is a moment where Simbu it's the first time that he raises a hand.
Yeah.
The first time is when he actually pushes Masanam away, says, hey, he says, in that letter scene. The second time is this, when he sees somebody being hit and he's not going to cow down and keep quiet. He comes and pulls that guy out. When he gets a shot, that's why we had, and I remember discussing with Lee. Lee said the first time I got into a fight with
the action
choreographer. Somebody hit me, Gautham, and I heard that tone in my head, and I was out. That made me even more angry. So I said, let's do that. And this is the first time he actually hits somebody. There was another moment after this. Once Masanam fires the gun, and they all run out. In the edit, we left it out. They come back into the room, Parota Kade, before Senduran comes in.
Right.
And they all look, and these guys all look at Muthu, and Masanam comes and says, Paravalada. And he pats him. So there's another moment, which we felt in the edit for length, we took it out. And from the gunshot, it cuts to Senduran straight away walking in.
Right.
I found the connect, which is why I held on to this dearly, these scenes.
And even these action sequences, they never heroize Muthu, because the action is either from his point of view, because the camera almost seems to be like where he is, the eye.
Yeah.
And so it's like everything is a blur. There's not one slow-mo kick or anything like that. There's another scene when Pavai is about to go into that room and he kicks the boss, right? The camera is at the boss's point of view. He's looking up. The camera is looking up at Muthu, and that's when he gets elevated a little.
Yeah.
Because the first time it's like he doesn't know what's happening, but this time he knows that he's deliberately like he's not reacting. He's actively going and like, I'm going to kick the shit out of you. So the camera becomes the
Exactly.
other thing. That's
That was the point.
That
And for the first time, we also cut to Pave, where she realizes what this guy is all about.
Yeah.
Because he also says, அங்க ஒர்க் பண்ற எல்லா பொண்ணுங்களும் உன் பேட்டி தான்டா, he
Right,
says, because
right.
he can do that to somebody else
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
That's when he stands out for her. And whenever we watch that on the edit and at dubbing, you know, people were laughing at that scene, as in a good way.
Yeah.
At Simbu and the way what he says and all that.
Yeah.
Rahman sir brings in a touch of love there with the background score.
Yeah.
He makes it a riff from Kalathakum Nee Venum there, and that made the scene a love scene actually.
Yeah.
And I loved that.
Yeah.
The whole perception, the idea of the scene changes now
Yeah.
into a love scene.
Yeah.
And it really worked for me,
Yeah.
you know, that
No,
change,
because he's
yeah.
doing it for love.
Yeah, exactly.
So actually, the typical way to show it would be Simbu's foot. The camera would be this way, and the Simbu's foot would be
Yeah, I
hitting
didn't
that
want
man.
to do that. I
But that is not it. This is the complete.
It was, that shot was not even there in the edit.
Yeah.
It was only from here.
Yeah. So it was like completely there, and the
Yeah.
only people you see are not the man being kicked, but you
Yeah.
only see
Yeah.
the guy and the girl
Land, yes.
kind of a thing.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that again was a really
Yeah.
this one. So if there's something glamorous or flashy in this movie, it's only when Rautar comes in. He's the guy who gets the hero introduction scene. You
Yeah.
first see his face in that auto mirror, and like one you know, like how typically when hero you first see the feet or the hand or the, you know, that when they get out of a car, it's like that. And then he walks in, and then he's like, I don't want to talk there. Let's talk outside.
Yeah.
And he like on the sutra chair, I want to sit in that revolving chair.
Yeah.
And so, what made you say, I want to treat this guy with this kind of like a bit of flashiness, if you will?
Yeah, so the scene was there in the script,
Right.
but the way it was shot was not there, obviously.
Right.
But I just thought he's my hero, and he plays a big part in part two,
Part two,
which
okay,
I
because
know.
he flees this
He
flick.
flees,
Yeah.
So, and then we actually shot a scene where he calls him also and tells him why I let you go in that scene, you know. But we didn't use that in the film.
As in why, like, he let Muthu go?
Yeah,
Ah, okay.
It didn't end between us.
Okay.
I stopped and I let you go. There's a reason, he says.
Okay.
Which I thought we'll keep all that later once the film does well and all that. But for me, that scene was a hero scene. I want to shoot him like that, and you know, with his height and everything, I want to treat him like a big
Yeah.
guy. You know, so somewhere maybe his height and everything sort of played in my head, and that's how the scene unfolded for me.
Now, this is Rahman's really most tonally vibrant score in a while, you know.
Yeah, that's the word, actually.
There's like something else. It's like, you know, I just remember like for me, music really registers. So I'm able to remember certain cues. It's like when they enter the place above the Parota Kada, where they're all staying, there's a chorus, there's, you know, the hi-hat jazz kind of drums.
Yeah.
There's like a very strange, I don't know if it's a flanger or I don't know what it is. It's a very muffled kind of like a guitarish kind of a
Hawaiian.
thing. Yeah, I don't. Is it the Hawaiian thing? He takes out that one clarinet bit from that song and puts it when those two are walking up the chair, the chawl. You know, when they're coming together, kind of a thing. There's just that clarinet playing.
Yeah.
It's very tonally diverse.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, oh, I'm making a gritty movie, so I have to give gritty sound.
Yeah.
And then there's a blast of percussion during the opening credits.
Yeah.
Like just like
Straight away.
You know, straight
Yeah.
away. You just
Yeah.
like. It's like fireworks, you know,
Yeah.
that happens. And especially what is interesting is there's this very big band, like jazz, trumpets and all that going on when that Raja Anachi and you know, those scenes happen, right?
Yeah.
Am I right in assuming that as Muthu kind of rises, the score kind of like rises as well?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I think, see, he saw the film. He was in the middle of concerts and Ponniyin Selvan, Cobra was happening. But he gave this some really dedicated time.
Right.
And personally, I saw him like sitting, asking me, moving things around a bit, saying, this is all recorded, but I want to go live some more, take some more time. It's okay. I know deadlines and all that stuff. So, and that suddenly he remembered Neeraj singing a rap at the audio launch. So he called him just like that, and he said, since these are Mallu's attacking, shall we do a Mallu rap here? I said, sir, in Aromri also, people said maybe it's because of me that you did it. As long as that doesn't come out, you really bother about these things? I said, no, I'm not. So then he recorded the rap with him. There's a first version of the rap that he sung and pushed the edges, and then Neeraj sang over that and added his own lyrics and all that. So there was a lot of work that went in, and I saw this happening in front of my eyes, where he was very sure. I told him also, sir, this is the most packed. He said, is that wrong? I mean, should we tone it down? I said, no, sir, it really elevates the film. But it's also on the line of the scene also.
Yeah.
you know, it's sometimes the music stands out.
Yeah.
Right? I really felt the scenes were there and the music was one layer on top.
Yeah.
And correctly, you know, so and I'm so glad he did that
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
film. And you're right, there is a progression with Muthu in the film. Yeah, there is.
What
yeah.
is the tick-tock sound that happens when that's that clock kind of sound that comes in the soundtrack?
Oh yeah, that's an effect.
Ah,
That's like a
yeah.
That's an effect that
Yeah.
Rahman sir's music team added.
So
there.
what is that about? I mean, like when the clock is ticking,
You know,
kind of.
the crowd erupts in that
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
That music actually did that and added to that scene.
Right.
It's like suddenly everything is gone for this guy, right? Because Simbu's on the floor.
Yeah.
He's taken out by this guy.
Yeah.
He's not, but the moment is for Rautar.
Rautar, yeah.
So it's like
Reverse,
a nice
yeah,
contrast
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
a thing.
yeah.
I felt it really worked. It's like one end to that when music is stretched and ended. No, that's what it was.
That's
I
what
think.
it was. Okay. There are lots of lovely smaller touches, which is like the first confrontation that Muthu has in the parota shop is with that Masanam guy, who's much bigger actually, and he kind of like does this,
Yeah.
it's like a thing. But later, it's that very Masanam who says, "Come out with us." He doesn't hold a grudge.
No.
It's not like you have a scene where he says, "Seripa, you nammaloda like or like they're making up for nothing." He's just it's very casual thing, and I think that's one of the things that informs this whole movie is that I'm not saying the movie is casual, but there's a very unforced kind of progression to everything. Like there's a very that's what makes this a very different kind of gangster movie. That it's not big event. It's not that. It's like there are a lot of these smaller little things that come and kind of like that Masanam character, and I like that touch because he's going to die.
He's gonna die.
So
yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is actually not a bad
Yeah.
guy at all. It's not like the last thing I'm remembering of him is he standing up to Muthu. I'm remembering him saying, "Come with us,
Yeah.
boss. Like let's have fun."
They have a
kind of
night out.
Yeah.
Initially, he starts by saying, "Nada, annikku ipdi panna, apdi panna, enna periyavana nee." And then he suddenly warms up to me. "Enna irundha namma oru kara, nalla vela vera seirava." And then it becomes one night of revelry, and they're together. And then he also realizes this man is all heart because he's crying about his child
Yeah,
and his wife,
yeah.
promising his wife he'll come
yeah.
in a week's time and all that. And then he's dead. That's it. Yeah.
Now Simbu is just like really something else here, and we talked about that mirror reflection scene and his eyes and all that. But in general, how long did it take for you guys to work together and find the part, the way he would talk, the way he would walk, that thing that he does with his collar? Like how long did it take for you guys? 0 days. Right
from the word go.
Okay.
Honestly, Barry, there was no discussion at all. Once I narrated the script, the next time we met was on location. There was no second narration also. That's why it's so easy for me to work with him. I'm not saying it's tough when actors have to go back and forth. That's also work. We have to do that. But with Simbu, it's so easy that there's a conviction about this man knows what he's doing. I'll trust him.
Right.
There was no discussion. I'm not even saying it just to put him up on a pedestal or anything like that. My team also after the first narration, the next time I met him was on location.
Right.
We sent a costume trial, which I didn't go for. My team went for that. All the costumes, the color palettes, everything was discussed here. Some shirts or something, he called me and said, "Nalla irukku, konjam ipdi pannalama, and the size mottum enakku konjam," all that he discussed. And then next time I met him was in Tiruchendur on day 1 of shoot. And 9 o'clock shoot, he was there. Makeup was all done and all that. And there was no makeup basically to look like that. And as he walked, he did this. So I went and asked him, "இப்படி தான் பண்ண போகிறோமா, இது ஃபுல்லாக மெயின்டைன் பண்ணணும்." "நான் பண்ணுறேன்." ஒருத்தர் இருக்கான், அவனை பார்த்தேன், நீங்கள் சொன்ன கதை அப்போ எனக்கு தோணுச்சு, அவன் இப்படி தான் நடப்பான், இப்படி தான் ஒன்று பண்ணுவான், அவன் யாருன்னு உங்களுக்கு அப்புறமா சொல்கிறேன், அவனை வச்சு நான் அப்படியே பண்ணிடுறேன், he said. And every scene he maintained that. But before every scene there'd be a discussion about the mood of the scene, why the scene is there, and what you have to do in the scene. But வெளில வந்து நின்றுட்டீங்க, இது வந்து உங்கள் அம்மாவுக்கு வந்து இது ஒரு கோவில் மாதிரி, அவங்க இப்படி தான் நிற்கிறாங்க, ஆனால் நீங்கள் வந்து எங்கேயோ கூப்பிட்டு வந்திருக்காங்கன்னு ஒரு ஹெஸ்டேஷனோட வாங்க. There was a little more there. We reduced about 2 minutes, which I might put out just in the way he approached that house, the way he stands outside and all. And slow transformation. Once you come to the parota kada, and I told him, அந்த மாசானத்தை எதிர்க்கும் போது அது ஒரு ஹீரோ எதிர்க்கிற மாதிரி இருக்கக்கூடாது. Just ஒரு நீங்கள் உங்கள் ஸ்டைல் ஒன்று பண்ணுங்க. So that's all discussion happens. Before the shot, what the shot is, and he gets it into him. The only time I asked him to do a take 2, we did a take, then lunch break, we moved on to the next scene. Then I felt, and I called him back. He said, "Adutha enna illa brother, I want to do one more of that." He was just looked at me shocked because that's never happened with us. Innonna ennachu eda prachaniya illa brother. I just felt, and I told him, I felt you had gone very high. Can we tone it down?
Which was the scene?
I'll tell you, where at the end where he walks down the steps there's a whole monologue sort of a thing, no? Where he talks to them, Enna, Mangda, Adi Adana, and that kind of scene. He'd done it in that, at that pitch. I told him, can we do it throughout the film? This is the only place where I see a little bit of Simbu, brother. இது வந்து மட்டும் tone on பண்ணலாமா? இல்ல brother, இந்த mood correct, நீங்க trust me, he said. இல்ல brother, I just take one, we'll take a call on the edit. That's all there was discussion. Sorry, okay. We did the scene and he said, on the edit, I promise you, you'll use the other one only. And I had to use the other one only. So what you see in the film is what I thought might not work. And he and everybody else felt that this will work much better given the mood and the tone of that scene.
Finally, part 2 promises to be, at least from the little bit that we saw here, promises to be a little more heroic, massy, if I may. Is that right?
What we want to make is a Godfather. What we want to make is Nayagan. This is not Nayagan.
You're talking about part 2?
Part 2.
Okay.
Jaymon sir and I, the discussion that we've had, we want to make Godfather. So if you know Godfather, then you know what I'm talking about. There's emotion, there's intensity.
Right.
There are those moments.
Right.
It'll be about 10 notches more than what we've done here.
Right.
Simbu and the producer want a completely out and out commercial film, right? So there's going to be a balance is what I'm hoping. Simbu himself has put the word out saying something new in Tamil cinema, come on, appreciate it, sort of a thing. Yesterday at the press meet, he said, I've requested Gautham to make part 2 a much more commercial film. So that's contradictory if you ask me. Because that's not what Tamil cinema is looking at today, at least what I'm hoping for. So I'm going to strike a balance. What Jaymon sir is talking to me about seems to be in that Simbu gets one very devilish sort of an attitude, but somewhere he's Muthu also. And I see it as a Nayagan / Godfather kind of a film. They want KGF.
That's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So
and after a long time, Barry, honestly, good, mostly great reviews, I'm saying. For me, you know, for the film.
Yeah.
When I mean for me, for the film. So that feels really good that what we've tried to do, somewhere about 80% it's reached. See, finally, that's what it boils down to, right? Numbers, collection.
Yeah.
You know, and all that. So
Like
there's no problem with the next film.
Yeah.
The next 3 films are already, you know, on and signed and all that. So that never has been a problem right from film 1 for me. So it's not about that. I don't know if the bigger heroes still want to work with me, but I'm okay. You know, I like what I'm doing, and I like to make films in this space. But at least after a long time, there's that sweet smell of success and producers happy.
Yeah.
You know, the team is happy. There's a success party, which actually is going to be a success party sort of a thing. So I'm happy and I'm in that space. Yeah.
So the other thing that makes me happy about this movie's success, because I really don't care about numbers. I mean, I'm happy for you, but I don't know what the numbers are and all that. But the fact that a nearly 3-hour movie, without many high points, or rather with subdued high points, like a major star, it has drawn people to theaters, is actually a very nice sign of where people might want to go. I'm not saying this may be a one-off, but I'm not saying this is the start of a trend or something like that. But I'm just saying it's very nice when a movie does its own thing within a known genre and still kind of, like, you've not compromised in many places and said, like, let's do a mass thing here, let's do a mass thing there, because like pretty much the few mass things are the interval block, the, you know, like kind of a thing, and even the end, and of course the last 5 minutes or whatever it is. So when this kind of movie does well and you know, it gets good word of mouth and it kind of goes on, that shows that people are not really, like, you can't box them, you know. It's not like they're going to see only fast moving things, because that was one thing that a lot of people were saying after the pandemic, like you know, people want to see fast moving things, something should keep happening all the time, you know. That's not necessary.
I think somewhere there's an understanding. I've also been watching the crowd in the theaters. It's a very young crowd that's coming in.
Right.
They like this. It's not necessarily that it's only fast-paced stuff that they
I liked it as well.
I'm putting you in that bracket.
Okay.
I'm talking about the so-called 2K kids that are watching the film.
I'm very flattered. Thank you.
They're getting this film, okay, and they get the last 5 minutes also, which is a completely different style from the rest of the film, right? So, and that the feedback from that crowd that I'm getting. So I'm thinking maybe the advent of watching these films over the past 2-3 years on OTT, sitting in their
And
homes,
maybe series also.
and series where it's nothing is like really not necessarily fast paced,
Yeah.
right? They've gotten used to a kind of filming and films that they like this, And then Tiruchitrambalam also works because that's not KGF or RRR, right?
Yeah.
It's a very simple, something
Yeah.
that I would have loved to do,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
friendship and, the friend turning out to be, it's a story from my life, actually.
yeah.
And that also works. The numbers are good, apparently.
Yeah.
We don't know what the exact numbers
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
but the numbers are good. A seemingly fresh, simple scene 20 years ago, it could be another version of Kadalaka Maryada.
Yeah.
But then there's a father, there's a grandfather, there's a best friend, and that also works.
Yeah.
RRR works, Pushpa works, and this also works, I'm saying. So then there is something that's really happening. People don't want to be boxed. And now I'm waiting for Ponniyin Selvan to come. And I'm sure, there's one stamp that he's put on it.
Right.
You don't want to talk about what didn't work for you?
About this in this film.
Yeah.
Like I told you, the heroine didn't work for me. I kind of. I
You don't
know
like Samira Reddy also?
Samira was a smaller role and it was a little more glamorous role. So it was not really a crucial thing. This particular heroine, she was. I was mainly very distracted by the way she was talking because the pauses were long between the sentences. See, and also you're placing her right next to a guy who's acting his heart out. It's like that guy is like 100% authentic, right?
But she's, not to argue with you, but she's lived in Bombay for 25
Sure,
years.
I get what you're.
It's her voice.
It's-
She doesn't speak Tamil.
Yeah.
My cousins who live in Bombay speak, Sridhar Raghavan speaks Tamil like this actually.
Right.
So it was a call that I took where we had actually dubbed her voice with somebody else.
Sure.
It was pristine, it was clear, even
Right.
the pauses were right. But I thought, why not make it sound a little off?
Yeah.
It's a maybe a bad call, maybe.
No,
because,
no. It doesn't,
yeah.
see, with art, there is no bad call, good call. It's only what works for you, what works for me. So it's like.
I like that husky thing that came out,
Yeah, so for me.
those
kind of-
scenes worked, but because of her, you were distracted a bit.
Yeah,
you're saying.
I really like the writing of those scenes.
Okay.
I like that she said that, okay, you're going to be following me home, right? Okay, you might
Yeah.
as well make yourself useful.
Yeah.
So I really liked all that. But something about the way she was delivering those
Yeah.
lines, that lip sync, that pause, and especially like you said in that song, like Simbu talking works, but her somehow it was a little off.
Okay.
And that was one thing that took me away from the
that's
film.
not bad.
Otherwise, this film kind of really, because even in Enoki, I liked the romance part, but the action part kind of felt a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
generic for me.
Yeah,
it didn't really
No, it was, yeah.
It didn't really work for me very well. But here, the entire film was very organic. It from start to finish, the mood was the same. Though, like you said, we talked about it. It was breathing. It was organic. It was all that was happening. So, congratulations to you and Jemon and everybody, Siddhartha Nuni,
Yeah.
Anthony, Simbu, everybody, because to kind of. It's not easy to find new entry points into a very well-established genre, and I think you guys pulled it off.
Thank
so,
you.
thanks.
Thank you, Barry.
Thanks.